Jim here with Prevelo Bikes, and today we're going to show you how to assemble your Zulu 1, Zulu 2, and Zulu 2 Air. Let's go ahead and open up the box. Just to use a regular pair of scissors, you can also use a box cutter and cut the straps. Now inside the box, there will be a small parts box, which we can just go ahead and set aside for now. And then you can just pull the bike out of the box. With the bike out of the box, we just need to go through and start removing all the packaging material. With the bike unpacked, go ahead and open up your small parts box. Now in this box, you're going to find the pedals, the shorter seat post, pair of reflectors, so front and rear, the tools needed to assemble the bike, which is a 15mm open-end pedal wrench and a 5mm Allen key. And then you'll just find your owner's manual and assembly instructions. Now the first part of assembly is to install the handlebars into the stem. So using our 5mm Allen wrench, we want to remove the faceplate from the stem. So just unscrew all 4 bolts. I like to make it so that the bolts will stay inside the faceplate. I find that if you leave it set up like this, it's easier to reinstall. And with the faceplate out of the way, you can insert your handlebar right into the stem. Now, the brake hoses need to be in the right orientation for everything to flow smoothly. So the front brake hose should be in front of the rear brake hose. So it's really easy to twist this handlebar around and have the brake hoses tangled up. You can also, accidentally put a brake hose behind the stem. So you want to make sure that the brake hoses, the rear flows around into the top tube, and then the front brake hose stays around and in front of the rear brake hose. Now you can see that the handlebar is knurled in the center. That helps you align it from side to side. Okay? So get that centered in there, and we're just going to snug it up for now. So you can readjust the handlebar before you fully tighten everything down. And then I just go in and try to finger tighten each bolt just to get the thread started. Okay. And with all the bolts started, you can grab your Allen key. And now it's important, when you tighten down a stem, you want to tighten it down in an X pattern. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. It doesn't matter which one you start on as long as you stay in an X pattern. You want to evenly tighten down the stem. Then on the top of the stem and the bottom, there is a gap between the faceplate and the stem body. So that gap, you want to keep it even as you tighten, which is part of the reason why we just kind of snug everything up before we really tighten it down. So let's start on this bolt so we stay on number 1. So starting on bolt number 1, I'm just going to get that threaded in and move to bolt number 2. So you can see I didn't even come close to fully tightening it because I'm just trying to get everything kind of snug. So bolt number 2, we'll move up to this one as bolt number 3. And then across again to bolt number 4. Okay, and now everything's snug, so I can still move the handlebar before I fully tighten it down. And then I want to check my gap and make sure the gap at the bottom and the top of the stem is even. Right now it's a little bit bigger on the bottom, so I'm just going to get that a little bit snugged up. Make sure the gap is even on both sides. That looks pretty good. Okay. Now before I torque everything down, I want to just rotate the bar so it sits where I want. So right now this is leaned way too far forward and the brake levers are facing straight down. You can see the bend in the bar is pointed forward. And then something like this would be way too far back. The brake levers are pointed up to the sky. So we want to get it to where the logo is in the front, the curve on the handlebar comes up, and then the brake levers sit about 45 degrees from the ground. And once you get there, instead of using the longer part of the Allen key and the short part for leverage, we're going to turn it so that we can get more leverage on the bolt. Start to get bolt number 1 snugged up, and then you got to work around the cables a little bit. Moving on to bolt number 2. And then 3, and I'm still not fully tightening these on my first pass. I'm just trying to tighten everything evenly. Okay, then move back over to bolt number 1. And basically repeat this until you feel like everything's nice and tight. The torque spec on this stem is 8 Newton meters, which is pretty tight. It is possible to over torque this, but with this Allen key, it's just long enough to where you can get a good feel. So I'm getting it nice and tight. Okay, and then since we went around it kind of in an X and in a circle, it basically means that so if you start to get these really tight, these ones could loosen up if anything sits into place. So after you feel like you got everything tight, it's good to just go through and double check all the bolts, just as a little safety precaution. All right, and then the handlebars are installed on the bike. With the handlebars on, we're ready to move on to installing our pedals. So to install the pedals, just grab your pedals and your 15mm pedal wrench. Now, before you install these, you have to know that the pedals are right and left specific. So each pedal is labeled with an R for right and an L for left, which corresponds with the R and the L on the right and left crank arms. Okay, this is because left pedals are opposite thread. So instead of your typical righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, the left pedal is going to be lefty-tighty. Okay, so I'm going to start with the right pedal. And when you install this, you can't just hold the pedal. You want to grab onto where the wrench actually goes. And I'm going to do this kind of from the back side here just so you can see. And I'm going to thread the pedal in just kind of righty-tighty. Okay, just getting it started. The left pedal, I'm going to insert it into the left crank arm. Do this one lefty-tighty. Now what I like to do after they both just get started is hold onto the pedals, and if you back pedal the bike and hold onto those wrench flats, both pedals will thread into the crank at the same time. Okay. Now with them inserted all the way, grab your wrench. You know, pedals need to be very, very tight, so you have to make sure that you tighten them down good with a wrench. So when you grab the wheel and spin it like this, you can see it actually rotates the crank. Okay. The other way it's just going to freewheel. So what I like to do is get the crank straight up, get our wrench inserted onto the pedal, and then if I push with the wheel, it's actually going to push the crank, which pushes the wrench. So I can use this force to push the wheel and the wrench into each other to get that pedal nice and tight. So get it as tight as you can. Okay. And once you get one pedal tightened, you can go ahead and move on to the other. Do the same thing. This trick works on both right and left crank. Okay. You just get that pedal as tight as you possibly can. All right, nice and tight. And the pedals are installed. Okay, so the bike is fully assembled. Now the Zulu 2 comes with 2 seat posts, and when it's shipped, it's going to have the longer seat post inserted. So if you open the quick release, this is as low as the seat actually goes. So if you need the seat to go all the way down, you're going to want to remove this and switch it out for the short seat post. Okay, so to switch to the short seat post, you're going to need the 5mm Allen key that you use to install the handlebar. So what I like to do is position the seat so that the Allen key can point out just like this, and then I hold the seat down with my, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to hold the seat down with my left hand, and then use that basically as leverage to loosen these bolts. These bolts can be really tight. Once you get one of them loosened up, it's a little bit easier on the second bolt. And then might have to get a little bit looser here. Once it's loose enough, you can switch to the longer portion of the Allen key. And you don't have to fully remove these. You just have to get them basically as loose as you can. And then at one point you'll be able to kind of slide the seat out. And then just for storage, I like to tighten the bolts back down. Just prevents this little piece in the seat post that holds the rails on the bottom portion. It can fall out because it's just sitting in there. So if you tighten that down for storage, you won't lose it. So then your new seat post, now you can see it's tight so that that piece isn't moving around. So you're just going to want to loosen up the bolts. So these are tightened all the way down. So we're going to use the longer part. Get a little more leverage on the bolt. And again, so you can see the bolt sticks through the nut. basically loosen it until the bolt is just flush with the end of the nut. Do that with both of them. Those nuts also might start spinning, so you can grab it with your finger. And then everything should be nice and loose. Now this bottom clamp, it has kind of a tail to it. Okay, that's going to be at the back of the seat. Okay. So with your seat, I like to kind of slide this in here. So I slid it in so that the rail is between on this side, and then you can rotate it in and slide it into place so that everything is seated. Okay, and then just go ahead and start snugging up the bolts. You don't want to fully tighten them down yet. I actually like to tighten them down on the bike, because as you tighten these bolts, the seat will tilt back and forth, and you don't want it to where the seat's sticking way up or way down. You want the seat on the bike to be level. So with these bolts just snugged up, we're going to insert this back into the bike and then fully tighten them down. So let's go ahead and slide our seat down into the bike. I just want to slide it in a little bit. So I like to have the seat nice and high. It gives me more space to work with the wrench. And then tighten down our quick release. Okay, and now I can see the seat is actually pretty level with the ground, which is great. It makes this next step a little bit easier. So if it's tilted up or tilted down, you just adjust the bolts to adjust the tilt. So if you tighten the rear bolt, it's going to bring the nose of the saddle up. If you tighten the front bolt, it's going to bring it down. In most cases, you want the seat to sit nice and flat. Anything outside of that's preference, but for your little one, let's just get it nice and flat and then adjust if needed later. Okay? So I'm just going to go in, and I want to tighten these bolts evenly since the seat is already level. So I'm just going to move back and forth from one bolt to the next, just getting it tight, keeping it level. And then as you tighten, you might need to kind of step back and just give it a look, make sure it's staying level. It's also important to note this seat's pretty small, so you don't have a lot of adjustment fore and aft, so back and forth, but the seat can actually slide back and forth. But you really want to just get it in the center, just right about where this one is, and it's hard because the seat's so small, there's not a lot of adjustment again. So just get it as tight as you can, get the seat in the position that you want, make sure it stays level, centered, and now it's nice and tight. Okay. So once the seat is installed and nice and tight, you just want to go through and adjust the seat height. Okay? As you adjust the seat height for your little one, you got to note that there is a minimum insertion mark for a seat post. So if you're beyond this insertion mark, especially on the short seat post, it's time to move back to the longer one. But with both posts, that insertion mark should always be hidden. So you want enough post inserted into the frame to where you don't see that. It's a strength issue. If there's not enough post in the frame and there's weight on the seat, it could damage the bike, it could hurt the seat, a child could crash. So you want to get this in there all the way. And once you get the seat at the proper height, align the nose with the top tube so you can look down, make sure everything stays nice and straight. And then just go ahead and tighten up your quick release lever. So if you tighten the quick release and the seat can move from side to side, you just need to get it a little bit tighter. So on the back side, there's a nut. Just righty-tighty, tighten it up, pull the lever, and the seat shouldn't move. If you tighten it too much, the lever will be hard to close, and if that's the case, you just got to back off the nut. You can do it by hand. There's no tools required. Okay. So now with everything adjusted, before you put your little one on the bike, you want to do a quick safety check. Okay. Now we've installed the handlebar on the stems. We know those bolts are tight. We want to make sure those pinch bolts are tight. So grab the front wheel, see if you can twist the handlebar. Okay. I like to grab the brakes front and rear, make sure the brakes are operating as they should, and then give the tires a squeeze and make sure there's air in the tires. You really should be doing this anytime your little one's going to go on the bike, especially the air pressure. So if there's any issues, you can address them before you put a kid on the bike. Okay. Now it's a safety check done, bike assembled, your little one's ready to rip. Enjoy. Thanks for watching.